Yeah, so a video about Rowdy without Rowdy being in the video. We're getting a couple more things done on it, things that we weren't going to do in the shop. So it's getting a manual brake conversion done on it. So we took the car up there to go run some more tests. We had made some adjustments to how the oil cooler fans come on and the AccuSump routing and stuff like that, and just to go run it. But the car ran great. Everything on it, we didn't have any issues with the car. I didn't even wind up checking anything other than the tires. We set the tire pressure before we left and they were good. I mean, I'm sure I could have checked them and adjusted some stuff a little bit, but it felt good, where they were wearing. That all looked great. I had the fans actually completely unhooked on the first session and it was fine.
Really?
But it warmed up, in the day, and so I figured I'll plug them back in and the temperature stayed pretty much around 230. The oil coolers are certainly working and we can tell that. So I'm curious what our temperature drop is. There you go. So I'm thinking about, especially with our digital dash, about putting a temperature sensor on the input to the oil coolers and on the output. And then we can see, just like intercooler temps. You want to see, how hot the air is coming in off the turbo and how much your intercooler is cooling it down. We can actually see what our oil temp drops would be. So all that to say, I'm just still really interested in that data. The car ran phenomenally. We didn't have any issues. We ran a bunch of laps over several sessions. The first session we were the only one on the track and all to ourselves. Now it was literally 30 degrees. Our oil temp said 28 degrees when I started the car. So it was quite cold. I did not take the cool shirt set up with me. I didn't need it at all. Yeah, it was like ice. I mean, just leaving the pit lane. I remember pulling out, and you're not going fast. There's the turn and everything, and turning the wheel, and it's understeering, and then catching, and then leaving the pits and putting a little bit of throttle in, and it's just spinning the tires up, and it was real slick. The full first lap, it's every corner had zero traction. You're heating things up, but even then you're just you turn in and it's you're turning the wheel and it's still going straight, and then it just is everything was real slick. The second, towards the end of that first session, the tires definitely gotten up to temperature and everything, and I was able to, run it around pretty good. The second session, we were able to get it up to temp, after 2 laps and really let it rip, pretty good, and ran the full session. I did come off actually before the end of it. We did loop the car in one of the last corners, and so I just pulled off just to kind of check everything out. And I was really playing with rotating the car in that section because I could carry more speed in and then track way out to the outside and reset up for a second kind of an apex. And so what I was working on was bringing it to the outside of the track and then doing kind of modulating the throttle there, and then doing a big lift to get the rear end to come around that, so I could hit that apex late. So I was playing with that a little bit more and a little bit more, and I did it, and it came around, but I wanted a little bit more angle, so I gave it I gave it a pretty good stab to keep it rotating, which it worked really well. Just it started coming, and it went further than I wanted. I thought, I can hang on to this, and I went nope. So I just went both feet in, and it looped around backwards and stopped and back into first gear. But the last session we ran, I think it was just after lunch. Everything was going. It was a bit warmer, so everything got up to temp pretty quick. Pushing harder, still dealing with the brake issues that we had, not literally having too much brake on tap. So not totally sending it, but working it faster and faster. So I passed my daughter in the straight, and I'd like to fully blame that as throwing me off on my line and everything. But realistically, I kept changing my turn-in points, and both of the big braking points in that direction, there's a hump right where they are, so the car gets light. But I think what I did is I passed her, and I was on a weird part of the track, and then I came up to that, and I went, okay, I'm gonna go through this a little bit faster this time. And I had actually slowed down too much, so I actually went back to the throttle, and then turned in a little bit later, so I was going faster, turned in later, and there's a little bit of banking in those corners, but it's I never made it into the banking, because the banking is only right up by the apex. You can kind of hit it, and you get a little load into everything and it carries you around. It was like turned in, it was like making it. Like, I was like, come on, and I'm looking and I'm like, I'm out of track, and so I just turned the wheel straight and just, you know, and it's you know, squirrely, and steered it, you know, back onto the track, and it wasn't, you know, I didn't think it was a big deal. It was just a field, you know, and it wasn't. I didn't feel anything rough or I mean, it just seemed like I, you know, put 2 off and, you know, whatever, got back on. And I'd actually remember what was going through my head is, you know, in any of those kind of situations, like everything slows down like a ton, you know, it felt like it took an eternity. I remember this guy we took out there one time, obviously we were going the other direction, and he put a tire off and cranked it back on, and the dirt had like eroded away from a bunch of people dropping a wheel. And so when he came back on, hit a curb like this, and it bent his wheel, like gave him a flat, like, and it was just like daily, you know, and he drove it there, and it was like, oh, it was like this big ordeal. And I'm thinking like, well, I don't want to wreck my wheels, you know, so I'm like getting it straightened up. I'm like looking at the curbing to make sure there's not like a, you know, whatever, a big lip there, and it looked fine. And obviously going the other direction, it's not like a ton of people go off there, so I was mowing the lawn for him. It wasn't even that bad. We picked a couple pieces of grass out of the grill. So pull off again and check the car, and I get out and I'm like, go around the front, I'm like, well, that's the end of that splitter. So it just, it was still there, but it was literally PPF on that splitter. And so the PPF was holding it together. It was, the carbon was just shattered. So
you should have G Suite taken off and like, you
know, I have it here.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah, here. We'll pause the video. We'll go grab it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I brought it back. Okay. Here's what's left of the splitter. Well, it's like you can clearly see that the PPF is just holding this thing. I mean, it's completely broken, cracked. I mean, just, so it must have been when I went off, there must have just been enough of like a lip, and the suspension must have just compressed enough that this caught and just, yeah. And so I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go with the G-Speed makes a splitter that bolts directly to our cooling package. Where it bolts on, it goes all the way back to the motor. So it flat bottoms it back to the motor. And then where it bolts on, there's actually aluminum skid plates that go up to the front, and then they like taper up. So it would keep it from digging out. Make your car ski if you bottom out. Well, it's amazing the PPF, like this is cracked completely through, and look, the PPF is holding it that together. Much strength. The whole, like, you can see how stressed it is, but like you can see if I go this way, it's just letting go. Going off the track caused this, obviously, but we didn't really hit anything. We just kind of went through the grass. But what we learned is that's probably not going to work for the one lap, just because going off the track is not like you're planning on doing it, but like we wouldn't want to have a slight off and have this happen on day one of the one lap of America. I'm gonna be carrying around like eight splitters with us, you know, so like this is pretty minor to have caused, you know, this. So, and this may be like, I'm looking at it and how it dug in, and I'm kind of wondering, there's a little bit of dirt right here too. Yeah, it must have just, the front must have just compressed enough, or there was maybe a little bit of a rise. Well, going off the track was, I mean, it was like dirt and gravel and grass.
You just had a ton of noises.
Yeah, there was, it was smooth, but it was dramatic, you know, right? So
yeah,
it was definitely louder than looping it. There's lesson number 1 for Rowdy.
You had talked about it in previous videos, like when you go to race, you risk it not coming back that day or something going wrong.
Yeah, this is a successful day. We walked away.
The car is still drivable. The fix is easy.
Well, I was going to take it back out. I took this off. That's why this is here. I took this off because I was going to go out for another session without it. It looks so goofy without it.
Like, I bet it does.
The factory, like the Z06 one, it doesn't have this much of a lip, but it still has a piece that like goes down. Mm-hmm. So it looks like you're like, oh, something's missing. It just looks real goofy. Like the front end comes up. Like it just looks really bizarre. It does not look like a Corvette should look. So we did that, and we parked it in the garage, and G-Speed will be taking care of the braking system, and we'll have it back in a few weeks. Fidgeting. There we go. All right. No more. But yeah, no, that's the story of our latest outing with Rowdy, and the Viper's going again, and carbon fiber confetti.